and welcome back to another video feature of the Immersive World's Handbook. Today I'm in Seattle, Washington, and if you know anything about Seattle, you probably have already guessed. Yes, I am at the, I would say, world-famous gum wall. We'll take a spin around and check it out, but if you know a little bit about the history of this interesting tourist attraction, it reminds me certainly of some of the sites in Europe when you go to a bridge and you see people putting locks on the bridge, and also there is a similar gum wall like this, Bubblegum Alley in San Luis Obispo, California, which I unfortunately haven't been to yet. But we're just behind here, you can see the theater down that way. And the lore behind this site is that somewhere around maybe 1993, patrons of the theater just started spontaneously putting their bubble gum on the wall, and that's how this tradition started. Over the years, concerns were raised about the preservation of the wall and just some of the conditions. So one of the local preservation groups dictated that the walls needed to be cleaned. So in 2015, over a period of 3 days, they actually blasted with a pressure washer much of the gum off the walls, and not too long after that, a so-called gum mob started re-plastering the walls here, or re-gumming the walls, I guess you would say, with the bubble gum. Certainly an interesting project when you think about just this idea that local history and tradition is maintained by people who feel very passionate about the fact that the bubblegum here is its own tourist attraction. Now, interesting thing about it, people have estimated that over the years, and we're getting again a much different state of the bubblegum than, say, compared in the past, but over the years the weight of the bubble gum, I've heard, has been estimated, close to 2,000 or 3,000 pounds. And you can think about it. We'll take a tour and I'll shoot some video, but if you just look back here with the GoPro, you kind of get a sense of just how massive this is. About 50 feet long, covered with gum. Today there's school groups out that are doing a project. I might have to check out to see what their project is. It's kind of curious. But the reason I chose looking at this site for us is to think about the significance of really two issues. One issue you might guess here is that just people making a space their own, and so obviously this has much in common with those sites in Europe where you can put your locks on the bridges. Also reminds me of pizza places, Gino's East in Chicago, where you can write in Sharpie to your, as much as you want on the booths and on the walls and stuff. And there are certainly bars like that all over the world where people can do that. And indeed, people do enjoy doing that. One of the things I talked about in the Immersive World's Handbook was the idea of patrons or guests giving back to a space. If you can leave your imprint, you can come back here, if it's still here, if they don't do another pressure washing. But if I'm this person who wrote my name in gum, I can, 3 years from now come back, and in a sense I have my own, imprint on the space, my sense of, personalization. And that's, I think, really key with spaces like this, is that sense that you are a part of it, and you can indeed literally be a part of it. You can leave your material trace here on the wall. There's a ton of French post-structuralist philosophical theory, literary theory that is would be very good to apply. We can also think of Descartes and his notions of everyday life and walking in the city. We could think of the Situationists International and their perspectives on geography, and also consider the significance in a philosophical, I would say even existential sense. And then the second thing I would address to you, and when you look at the book up here on the wall, is theories on the palimpsest. And if you're familiar with a palimpsest refers to these old, basically religious texts, where scribes would write in the text, and then over a period of time you would see residue from one layer of the text onto the next layer. And that's the theory of the palimpsest. So certainly you could say over time this space becomes palimpsestuous because people are adding their own touches and so forth. One of the things I think that is kind of interesting is that people put their, here you go, here's an actress and vocalist here. Now, I'm not assuming that these actual people put their markings, but so in addition to the gum, and people certainly are spelling out words, they're spelling out their names. You get just, if you need pest control, you can contact Levi Lukas to get your pest control. There's a person who took a photo, not a very well exposed photo, on one of those Instamatic cameras, and took a shot of himself and so forth. So that's part of, I think, of the joy of a space like this, is that people can really make it their own. And so we can take a little more footage here and just look at it, and you can see it kind of goes along. Actually stops at this point, so maybe we'll spin up and take a look walking up the street perhaps. Okay, so we're taking in a little bit more here. Again, you can see how extensive this is. It just occurred to me, the other site, and I need to do a video on these types of spaces, is the railroad tunnel, which I did do a video on, the Chinese tunnel up in near Truckee, California. That's another space, right, where there's a ton of graffiti, and it also has this feel, very similar in terms of walking through a corridor as you get here. Okay, so you heard some of my on-site commentary, so we'll look at a bit more video I shot here, and then mostly the remainder of this video will be my still photography. I should mention to you that I've created actually a pretty extensive experimental video on the gum wall, which you're welcome to take a look at, and that has actually no narration and just focuses on the imagery, really looking at two things: the gum and the people, often taking pictures posing with the gum. And there are some interesting social media reviews of the gum wall here in Seattle. One of them mentioned that there's only two things you'll find here: gum and people taking pictures of gum. And to some extent, as simplistic as that sounds, it's a pretty accurate description of what we have here as far as a project of, some would say a tourist trap, others would say it's something more experimental and an opportunity for people, visitors, guests, to leave somewhat of their imprint on the space after they've left it. And I should say, in terms of thinking about this space as a tourist trap or not, on the occasion of my airport return shuttle back to the airport, I talked with a local, and she was actually complaining about the gum wall, saying it's something only for tourists and locals don't care about it. I do have some acquaintances I know from a project I did years ago on American Spaces who actually said the opposite. They saw this as something quite significant and unique, and thus something that could be celebrated by locals. And I think, the nature of looking at what a tourist trap is or is not is very curious. Obviously, for some people, this could be seen as a tourist trap, and for others, they would say it's actually something more meaningful. Curiously enough, in 2009, I think it was, there was a contest for the germiest attractions around the world, and this was near the top, I think second or third only to the Blarney Stone, and I'm forgetting some of the other ones, but it's maybe a more dubious honor to be bestowed upon an attraction, but clearly there is something about the uniqueness here that relates to it, if you will, its germiness, the fact that people stick their gum. And as you can see from so many of the images today I've shot, it's not just gum, it's also images, it's knickknacks, business cards, just a curious assemblage, a juxtaposition of all these different items with the gum. And that, I think, makes it really interesting and more personalized, as maybe strange as that sounds to some of you as you're watching and listening to my review. Again, I will likely down the road do another video on the idea of the palimpsest, and specifically focusing on the building up, the accumulation of all the gum and all the other items, and what that means for this attraction, what it means for themed spaces. And so certainly, check that one out. I'll explore this theory a little bit more in that particular video and make some comparisons to some other spaces, including the other gum wall that I know of in San Luis Obispo, California, a bubblegum alley. So when you think, to go back to the concept of the tourist attraction, when you think about what makes something a tourist attraction versus a tourist trap, I feel like that line could be much more subtle than we give it credit. I think sometimes we assume, like the woman on the van, well, if it's something tawdry, if it's something that is a little bit disgusting or disturbing like this, or unclean, perhaps the perception is of such, an idea, then perhaps that indicates that it's a tourist trap. But I think, again, the other side of it is that people have so much joy. If you check out any of my other video I shot on my other video I mentioned earlier, people really are into the space. People love the photos. People love the videos. There are tours. I saw on the particular day of my visit a school group. I didn't get a chance to see what their assignment was, but I don't think we can take that for granted. Again, people give life, as I talked about earlier with Desserteau and some of the other people. We give our own imprints to the city, to various spaces, including a space like the gum wall, and thus it does have a meaning for us. I think the other thing that suggests it's maybe not easy to just classify this as a tourist trap is, when the city decided to use the pressure washers and to take away the gum layers because of preservation issues and concerns, the so-called gum mob came, back and tried to quickly replaster the walls with the bubble gum. And so what I think this suggests is that, in fact, people do find spaces like these to be significant. They impart their own meanings on the space. Again, they can leave something behind, which I suggested in one section of the Immersive Worlds Handbook. The ability for the guest to do this in a themed or immersive space is very significant. Another thing I really like about this space is that it is created by people, right? There is no design aesthetic per se, other than gum and the randomness of it, but no one is designating how it should look. There are no rules of use. There's nothing like that. There isn't a corporate sponsorship or anything of that nature. So I think, there's so much to celebrate here at the gum wall in Seattle, Washington. Now, is it for everybody? Certainly not. If you go to the gum wall, if you take your photos, if you even dare to put your bubble gum on the wall and leave your imprint, are you a conformist? Are you partaking in a tourist trap? Again, I'll go back to my earlier statements. I think it's a very subjective notion to be able to even identify and define what constitutes a tourist trap. So it's not something I want to tackle today, other than to say it's in the eye of the beholder and it's a very subjective issue. I hope you've enjoyed the video feature today here in Seattle, Washington at the famous gum wall. Please come back for additional video features of the Immersive Worlds Handbook.